You're working harder than ever, earning more than you ever thought possible, and yet you feel trapped. Sound familiar? Here's the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to admit. Modern success might just be modern slavery with better marketing. You've been sold a lie, and it's costing you everything that actually matters. See, we're told that financial freedom comes from earning more. Get the promotion, land the big client, hit six figures, and finally, you'll be free. But here's what they don't tell you. The money trap doesn't care how much you earn. In fact, the more you make, the tighter it grips. You upgrade your life, increase your expenses, and suddenly you're running twice as fast just to stay in the same place. You're not getting richer, you're just getting more expensive to maintain. Today, we're diving deep into something called the paradox of earning, and I'm bringing two absolute giants to help us crack this thing wide open. Machiavelli, the master of power and strategy, and Erich Fromm, the psychologist who understood why modern people feel so empty despite having so much. Together, they're going to reveal exactly why chasing wealth the way you've been taught is destroying your freedom, not building it. And look, I know what you're thinking. Here we go, another video telling me money doesn't matter. That's not what this is. Money matters. But what matters more is whether you're using it or it's using you. By the end of this video, you're going to understand the psychological trap you're caught in, how consumer culture has hijacked your desires, and most importantly, how to break free and earn without becoming a slave to your own income. But here's the deal. This only works if you stick around until the end. Because the real breakthrough, the actual strategy for escaping this trap, comes in the final section. So do me a favor. If you're ready to stop being owned by money and start mastering it instead, hit that like button right now and subscribe to support the channel. It tells me you want more content like this, more truth that cuts through the BS. Now, let's get into it.
The money trap. Why we think we're free when we're not.
Here's the thing most people won't admit. They're working harder than ever, earning more than their parents did, and yet they feel more trapped than free. You see it everywhere. Friends climbing the corporate ladder, entrepreneurs hustling around the clock, everyone chasing that next promotion, that next deal, that magical number in their bank account that's supposed to finally bring peace. But here's what nobody tells you. The money trap doesn't announce itself with chains and locks. It comes disguised as opportunity, as ambition, as the very thing you're supposed to want. And by the time you realize you're caught, you've already built your entire life around it. Think about it for a second. When was the last time you made a major decision? Where to live, what job to take, whether to start that business, without money being the primary factor? I'm not talking about being practical or responsible. I'm talking about that gut-level fear that whispers, but what if I can't afford it, or I need to make more first? That voice, that's not financial wisdom speaking. That's the trap tightening. Because here's the paradox of earning. The more you make, the more you need. You get a raise, you upgrade your lifestyle. You land a big client, suddenly you've got new expenses to match. It's like running on a treadmill that speeds up every time you think you're getting ahead. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's just how life works. You earn, you spend, you climb. And sure, that's what consumer culture has been drilling into your head since you were old enough to watch commercials. But let me ask you something uncomfortable. If you're earning twice what you made 5 years ago, are you twice as free? Or are you just twice as busy, twice as stressed, and twice as afraid of losing it all? Most people, if they're brutally honest, would admit they feel more enslaved now than when they were broke. At least back then, they had time. At least back then, they could still imagine a different life. Now they're locked into mortgages, car payments, private schools, and a lifestyle that demands they keep running just to stay in place. The real kicker is this. Modern slavery doesn't look like chains anymore. It looks like a corner office, a luxury sedan, and a vacation you're too burnt out to enjoy. It feels like success right up until the moment you realize you can't remember the last time you did something just because you wanted to, not because it made financial sense. And that's where the money trap gets truly insidious. It convinces you that freedom is just one more promotion away, one more zero in your account, one more year of grinding. But what if the entire game is rigged from start? What if chasing success in the way you've been taught is precisely what's keeping you from ever actually being free? That's where things get interesting, and that's where we need to look at what the masters of power and psychology actually understood about this game.
Machiavelli's lesson: power without self-mastery is weakness.
Machiavelli gets a bad rap. Everyone thinks he was just some cynical manipulator teaching princes how to backstab their way to the throne. But here's what people miss. Machiavelli was a realist who understood that power without discipline is just weakness wearing a crown. He wrote about princes who had all the resources in the world, armies, treasuries, kingdoms, and still lost everything because they couldn't master themselves. They became slaves to their fears, their greed, their need for validation. And the same principle applies to your relationship with money. You can have all the financial freedom in the world on paper, but if you haven't mastered your own desires and fears, you're just a well-paid servant to forces you don't even recognize. Let's get practical here. Machiavelli understood that true power comes from knowing when to act and when to hold back, when to spend and when to save, when to take risks and when to protect what you've built. But most people today, they're reactive. They earn money, and immediately it's burning a hole in their pocket. They see everyone else upgrading, so they upgrade. They feel insecure, so they buy something to feel better. They want respect, so they drop cash on symbols of success. This isn't financial freedom. This is being controlled by external forces while thinking you're making free choices. Machiavelli would have called this weakness masquerading as strength, and he'd be absolutely right. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The market economy doesn't care about your self-worth versus money confusion. In fact, it profits from it. Consumer culture is designed to keep you feeling just insecure enough to keep buying, just successful enough to keep working, just afraid enough to never risk real freedom. And if you think I'm exaggerating, look at your own behavior. How many things have you bought not because you needed them, but because they signaled status, success, or belonging? How many career moves have you made not because they aligned with your values, but because they paid more or impressed people you don't even like? That's not you being strategic. That's you being manipulated. And Machiavelli, for all his ruthlessness, would tell you that a prince who can't see when he's being manipulated isn't fit to rule anything, least of all his own life. The lesson here cuts deep. You can't control money if you can't control yourself. You can't achieve real financial freedom if every decision you make is driven by fear of not having enough or desire to prove you're enough. Machiavelli understood that power, real power, comes from internal mastery first, external control second. But we got it backwards. We're trying to control our bank accounts while our emotions, our insecurities, and our desperate need for validation are running wild. And that's exactly why the wealth illusion works so well. It keeps you focused on the external game while the internal battle, the one that actually matters, goes completely ignored. But if you think Machiavelli's cold realism is harsh, wait until you hear what a psychoanalyst had to say about what's really happening inside your head.
Fromm's warning: when having replaces being.
Erich Fromm spent his entire career studying one fundamental question. Why do people in modern, affluent societies feel so empty? He watched as the Western world became richer than any civilization in history, and yet depression, anxiety, and existential despair skyrocketed. His answer? We've shifted from a mode of being to a mode of having. And that shift, he argued, is quietly destroying us from the inside out. See, when your entire sense of self becomes tied to what you own, what you earn, and what you can display to others, you stop being a person and start being a collection of possessions. You're not you anymore. You're your job title, your car, your house, your portfolio. And the terrifying part? Most people don't even realize it's happened. Let's break this down in terms you can feel. Think about how you introduce yourself at parties or networking events. Do you say, I'm someone who loves philosophy and long walks? Or do you say, I'm a lawyer, or I run a marketing agency? Do you define yourself by what you do to earn money, or by who you actually are when nobody's paying you? For most people, the answer is obvious and disturbing. Your identity has been hijacked by economic psychology. You've internalized the idea that you are what you produce, what you earn, what you achieve. And once that happens, you're trapped in a cycle where you must constantly acquire more, achieve more, earn more just to feel like you exist. This isn't ambition. This is a psychological addiction disguised as success. Fromm saw this clearly. Consumer culture doesn't just sell you products. It sells you a sense of self. Every ad, every influencer, every successful person you see is sending the same message. You are what you have. Don't have a right car? You're not successful. Don't have the right clothes? You're not attractive. Don't have the right income? You're not worthy. And here's the trap within the trap. Even when you get those things, the feeling of worthiness lasts about 5 minutes before the goalposts move again. Because the system isn't designed to satisfy you. It's designed to keep you hungry, insecure, and spending. That's the money trap in its purest form. You're chasing an identity that's always just out of reach, no matter how much you earn. Now here's where it gets truly dark. When having replaces being, you lose the ability to experience life directly. You can't enjoy a meal without posting it. You can't take a vacation without calculating its ROI or worrying about what you're missing at work. You can't even relax without feeling guilty because relaxation doesn't produce anything, doesn't earn anything, doesn't add to your portfolio of achievements. You've become so identified with what you have that the idea of just being, of existing without producing, without earning, without proving, feels like death. And in a very real sense, it is. It's the death of the self that consumer culture demands in exchange for the wealth illusion it's selling. But if you think this is just abstract philosophy, wait until you see the concrete mechanisms of how this trap actually operates in your daily life.
The wealth illusion. Why more money doesn't mean more freedom?
Here's a question that'll make you uncomfortable. If you doubled your income tomorrow, would you actually be twice as free? Most people instinctively say yes, but the data, in your own life, if you're honest, tells a completely different story. Studies show that beyond a certain threshold where basic needs are met, additional income has almost zero impact on happiness, fulfillment, or sense of freedom. In fact, many high earners report feeling more trapped than ever. Why? Because the wealth illusion isn't about the money itself. It's about what happens to your life, your expectations, and your psychology as your income rises. You don't get richer. You get more expensive to maintain. Let me paint you a picture you've probably lived. You're making $50,000 a year, barely scraping by, dreaming of the day you hit 6 figures. Then it happens. You get the promotion, the new job, the breakthrough. Suddenly you're making $100,000, $150,000, maybe more. And for about 3 months, it feels incredible. But then something weird happens. Your lifestyle expands to match your income. You move to a nicer place because you can afford it now. You upgrade your car because you deserve it. You start eating at better restaurants, taking nicer vacations, buying things you never thought you'd buy. And within a year, guess what? You're back to feeling like you don't have enough. You're back to living paycheck to paycheck, just with bigger paychecks and bigger expenses. That's not financial freedom. That's just a more expensive version of the same trap. The paradox of earning reveals itself here in brutal clarity. The more you make, the more the world expects from you. And worse, the more you expect from yourself. You can't show up to client meetings in your old car anymore. You can't live in a modest neighborhood when you're supposed to be successful. You can't take budget vacations when your colleagues are posting from Bali and the Maldives. The pressure to maintain appearances, to live up to your new income bracket, to prove that you've made it, this pressure becomes a new form of modern slavery. And the cruelest part? You're the one enforcing it. Nobody's forcing you to upgrade everything. But consumer culture has so thoroughly rewired your brain that downgrading feels like failure, like admitting you're not really successful after all. Here's what nobody tells you about chasing success. It's designed to be infinite. There's always another level, another benchmark, another person making more than you. You think hitting $200,000 will finally be enough, but then you meet people making $500,000 and suddenly your success feels inadequate. You think making $1 million will bring peace, but then you're in rooms with people worth $10 million, $50 million, and the goalpost moves again. This isn't a bug in the system, it's the feature. The wealth illusion works precisely because it's an illusion. It promises that the next level will bring freedom, peace, satisfaction. But it never does. It just brings new pressures, new expectations, new ways to feel like you're not enough. And until you see this mechanism clearly, you'll keep running on that treadmill, earning more and feeling less free with every step. But the real question is, who's actually benefiting from keeping you on that treadmill? That's where we need to talk about the invisible forces shaping your every desire.
Consumer culture, the invisible hand that controls your desires.
You think your desires are your own, don't you? You think you want that new phone, that luxury watch, that exotic vacation because you genuinely desire them. But here's the uncomfortable reality. Most of what you want has been carefully engineered, tested, and implanted in your mind by an industry that's mastered the art of manufacturing desire. Consumer culture isn't just about selling products. It's about creating needs you didn't have, insecurities you didn't feel, and desires that can never be satisfied. It's the invisible hand that's been shaping your psychology since childhood. And it's so subtle, so pervasive, that you've mistaken its voice for your own. Let's get specific. Why do you feel behind when you see someone's vacation photos on Instagram? Why does driving past a luxury car dealership trigger something in you? Why does seeing a colleague get promoted make you question your own worth? These aren't natural human reactions. They're conditioned responses. You've been trained through thousands of hours of advertising, social comparison, and cultural messaging to feel inadequate until you acquire the next thing. And the system is brilliant because it makes you feel like you're freely choosing. Nobody forced you to buy that expensive gadget. You wanted it. But did you really want it? Or were you sold a story about what it would make you? More successful, more attractive, more complete? That's the money trap working at its finest. It makes you believe that consumption is self-expression when it's actually self-imprisonment. Here's where economic psychology gets truly insidious. Marketers don't sell products anymore. They sell identity, belonging, and status. They've figured out that you're not buying a car. You're buying the feeling of success. You're not buying clothes. You're buying confidence and social acceptance. You're not buying a house. You're buying proof that you've made it. And once they've linked your sense of self-worth versus money to their products, they've got you. Because now you're not just a customer, you're dependent. You need to keep buying to keep feeling worthy. You need to keep upgrading to keep feeling relevant. You need to keep consuming to keep feeling like you exist in a world that measures human value in dollars and possessions. The truly terrifying part? This system doesn't just affect your wallet. It rewires your entire value system. You start judging people by what they have instead of who they are. You start measuring your life in acquisitions instead of experiences. You start believing that work-life balance means earning enough to buy experiences rather than actually living them. And before you know it, you've become a perfect little cog in the machine of consumerism, working endlessly to buy things you don't need, to impress people you don't like with money you don't have time to enjoy. You've traded your freedom, your time, and your authentic self for the wealth illusion. The false promise that the next purchase, the next income level, the next achievement will finally make you feel whole. But feeling whole was never the goal. Keeping you hungry, insecure, and spending, that's the goal. And until you see how deeply this has infiltrated your psychology, you'll keep confusing consumption with fulfillment, acquisition with freedom. But there's an even deeper layer to this trap, one that strikes at the very core of who you think you are.
Self-worth versus money, the identity crisis of modern success.
Let me ask you something that might sting a little. If you lost your job, your income, and all your possessions tomorrow, who would you be? Not what would you do? Not how would you recover? Who would you be? Most people freeze at this question because they've spent so long building an identity around what they earn and what they own that they've completely lost touch with who they are underneath all of it. This is the identity crisis at the heart of modern slavery. You've outsourced your sense of worth to external metrics, salary, title, possessions, status. And in doing so, you've made yourself completely dependent on a system that doesn't give a damn about you as a human being. Here's how this plays out in real life. You meet someone successful, and the first thing you feel is either admiration or envy, depending on how you measure up. You see someone struggling financially, and you feel either pity or superiority. You judge yourself constantly based on where you fall in the economic hierarchy. Made a good investment? You're smart, capable, worthy. Lost money? You're a failure, incompetent, less than. Your mood, your confidence, your entire sense of self rises and falls with your bank account balance. This isn't financial freedom. This is giving the market complete control over your emotional and psychological state. You become a puppet, and money is pulling the strings. Now, Fromm would tell you this is exactly what happens when having replaces being. When your identity is built on what you have rather than who you are, you become terrified of loss. Every market downturn is an existential crisis. Every setback feels like a personal annihilation. You can't take risks, can't pursue passion, can't make choices based on values because your entire sense of self is tied to maintaining and growing what you have. And consumer culture loves this. It loves that you're so insecure, so dependent on external validation, that you'll work yourself to death to keep up appearances. It loves that you've confused your net worth with your self-worth, because that confusion is what keeps you trapped in the paradox of earning. Working harder to earn more, to buy things that temporarily mask the emptiness of having no idea who you actually are. But here's where it gets really twisted. The more successful you become by society's standards, the harder it becomes to escape this trap. Because now you've got something to lose. You've built a lifestyle, a reputation, an image that demands constant maintenance. You can't just walk away from the high-paying job you hate, because what would people think? How would you pay for everything? Who would you be without the title, the income, the status symbols? This is the psychological addiction that Machiavelli warned about, when your power over external things becomes a prison because you've lost power over yourself. You've achieved the wealth illusion, but you've sacrificed your actual self in the process. And the truly tragic part is that most people don't even realize this has happened until it's too late, until they're so deep in the trap that the idea of escape seems impossible. But what if it's not? What if there's actually a way to earn, to succeed, to engage with money without becoming its slave? That's the question we need to answer now.
Breaking free. How to earn without being owned.
All right, let's get tactical. Because understanding the trap is one thing, but escaping it is another game entirely. The first thing you need to accept, and this is hard, is that financial freedom isn't about the amount of money you have. It's about the relationship you have with money. You could be broke and free, or rich and enslaved. The difference isn't in your bank account, it's in your psychology. So how do you build a relationship with money where you're the master and it's the tool? You start by asking yourself one brutal question about every financial decision. Am I doing this because I genuinely want it, or because I'm afraid of what not having it says about me? Let me give you a framework that actually works. Before you make any purchase over a certain threshold, let's say $100 or whatever feels significant to you, pause and ask, what am I actually buying here? If you're buying a luxury item, be honest. Are you buying the thing itself? Or are you buying status, validation, a temporary hit of feeling successful? If it's the latter, don't buy it. Not because spending money is bad, but because spending money to fill a psychological void is like trying to fix a leaky roof with expensive furniture. It doesn't solve the actual problem. It just makes you more invested in a broken system. This practice alone will save you thousands, and more importantly, it'll start breaking the psychological addiction that's been running your financial life. Second, you need to decouple your income from your identity. And I mean really decouple it. Start introducing yourself in ways that have nothing to do with what you do for money. I'm a writer instead of I'm a lawyer who writes on the side. I'm someone who loves philosophy and mountain biking instead of leading with your job title. This feels weird at first because you've been conditioned to believe that what you do for money is who you are. But here's the truth. Your job is a role you play to earn resources. It's not your identity. The moment you separate these two, you gain something powerful, the ability to make career and financial decisions based on what serves your life, not what defines your worth. You can take a pay cut for better work-life balance without feeling like a failure. You can change careers without an identity crisis. You can prioritize meaning over money without feeling like you're betraying some sacred duty to maximize income. Third, and this is crucial, build what I call freedom equity instead of just financial equity. Freedom equity is anything that increases your autonomy, options, and independence. That might mean savings, sure, but it also means skills that are portable, relationships that aren't transactional, knowledge that compounds, health that sustains you, and a lifestyle that doesn't require massive income to maintain. Most people do the opposite. They build lifestyles that demand ever-increasing income, which reduces their freedom with every dollar they earn. They become trapped by their own success. But if you intentionally keep your baseline needs low while you build resources, you create options. You create the ability to say no. You create leverage over your own life. And that's what actual financial freedom looks like. It's not about having more. It's about needing less while building more capacity to choose. But there's one final piece to this puzzle, one final realization that ties everything together.
The real paradox: you must master money before money masters you.
So here we are at the heart of it all. The paradox of earning isn't that you shouldn't earn money or that ambition is bad. The paradox is that the only way to be free with money is to be free from money. You have to master it before it masters you. And mastery doesn't mean having a lot of it. Mastery means having the right relationship with it. It means understanding, down to your bones, that money is a tool, not a scorecard. It's a means, not an end. It's something you use to build a life, not something that defines whether your life is worth living. Think about Machiavelli's princes again. The ones who succeeded weren't the ones with the most gold or the biggest armies. They were the ones who understood power, how to use it, when to use it, and most importantly, when not to be controlled by it. The same applies to you. You can have all the money in the world, but if you're psychologically dependent on it, if your self-worth rises and falls with your portfolio, if you can't make a decision without checking your bank balance first, then you're not wealthy. You're just a well-compensated slave. Real wealth, real power, is knowing that you'd be okay, that you'd still be you, even if it all disappeared tomorrow. That's mastery. That's freedom. Now, let me be clear. This doesn't mean living like a monk or rejecting ambition. It means being strategic about what you're actually chasing. Erich Fromm didn't say you shouldn't have things. He said you shouldn't let having things replace being yourself. The difference is everything. You can earn money, build wealth, create success, but only if you do it consciously, with clear eyes about what you're doing and why. The moment you start chasing success to prove something, to fill a void, to quiet that voice that says you're not enough, that's when you've lost. That's when a money trap snaps shut. And once it does, all the financial freedom in the world won't help you because you'll be imprisoned by your own psychology. The real paradox, the one that most people never see, is this. You can only truly earn without being enslaved if you're willing to walk away from earning altogether. You have to be okay with less. You have to be okay with people thinking you're not ambitious enough, not successful enough, not maximizing your potential. You have to be okay with opting out of the endless race for more, better, bigger. And paradoxically, that's when you actually become free to earn on your terms, to build wealth that serves your life rather than consuming it. That's when money becomes a tool in your hands instead of a master over your soul. But getting there requires something most people aren't willing to do. It requires looking in the mirror and admitting that they've been running a race they never wanted to run, chasing prizes they don't actually care about, all because they confuse society's definition of success with their own. And that realization? That's where real freedom begins.
The choice is yours.
So here's where we land. You now know the trap. You see how it works, how it's been working on you, probably for years. The question isn't whether the paradox of earning is real. You've felt it in your own life. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Because here's the thing, knowledge without action is just entertainment. You can watch this video, nod along, feel that spark of recognition, and then go right back to the grind tomorrow, chasing the same illusions, running the same race. Or you can make a different choice. You can start asking yourself those uncomfortable questions. You can begin separating your identity from your income. You can build freedom equity instead of just financial equity. The tools are in your hands now. The real question is, are you actually going to use them? And look, if this video hit you differently, if something clicked that hadn't clicked before, do two things for me. First, smash that like button. It genuinely helps more people find this content and break free from the same traps. Second, subscribe and hit the notification bell because we're building something here. We're building a community of people who refuse to be slaves to systems that don't serve them, who choose clarity over comfort, who'd rather live free than look successful. Drop a comment below and tell me, what's one thing you're going to change about your relationship with money after watching this? I read every single comment, and your insights always push these conversations deeper. Now go master your money before it masters you. I'll see you in the next one.